A live television interview is often a carefully orchestrated event designed to capture engaging conversation and spontaneous moments. However, in one such interview, things took an unexpected turn when the host openly mocked Clint Eastwood's conservative views, assuming the Hollywood legend would falter under scrutiny. Yet, what followed left the audience utterly stunned. As the studio lights blazed down, Clint Eastwood settled into his chair with a calm yet perceptive demeanor. The set gleamed with modernity, sleek glass panels reflecting the bright white glow of production lights. The audience murmured with anticipation, their excitement blending with the subtle hum of activity in the studio. The scent of freshly brewed coffee from the backstage lounge mixed with the crisp chill of air conditioning, setting the stage for what would become an unforgettable exchange. Eastwood sat still, his weathered hands resting loosely on the armrests. His expression remained unreadable, but beneath the surface, a quiet awareness stirred. Over the years, he had participated in countless interviews, answering endless questions, yet something about this moment felt different. His eyes flicked to the host, a woman half his age, poised and smiling, her expression laced with subtle condescension disguised as politeness. She believed she had the upper hand, a common mistake many had made before. The tension in the room was barely perceptible, but Eastwood felt it keenly. It was in the way the audience shifted in their seats, in the heightened alertness of the camera operators. He had seen enough of these setups to recognize an ambush when he saw one. His thoughts drifted back to a time when Hollywood wasn't so quick to sneer at a man for speaking his mind, an era where standing by one's principles was seen as a mark of integrity rather than an invitation for ridicule. He wasn't one for nostalgia, but there was a difference between remembering and regretting. A low chuckle almost escaped him. He had walked into on-screen gunfights with less apprehension than he felt in this moment. It wasn't fear that stirred inside him. Eastwood had long outgrown that. Instead, it was a slow, simmering awareness that his words could be twisted, his intent misrepresented. Still, he wasn't one to back down. He met the host's gaze, sensing the anticipation behind her polished demeanor. The audience hushed, sensing the shift in atmosphere. The host shuffled her cue cards, her manicured fingers tapping rhythmically against the desk. She leaned forward, her eyes glimmering with amusement. "So, Clint," she began, her tone deceptively light, "you've had an incredible career. Iconic films, awards, a legacy that speaks for itself. But let's talk about something a little different." Eastwood remained still, yet he braced himself for what was to come. The host's lips curved into a smirk. "You've been pretty vocal about your, let's say, traditional views. Some people might call them outdated, even controversial. Do you ever feel out of touch with today's world?" A ripple of laughter spread through the audience. Not genuine amusement, but rather the kind laced with expectation, waiting for him to falter. Eastwood's jaw tightened slightly, though his face remained impassive. He had spent decades in Hollywood portraying men who stood firm against impossible odds. But this moment was not a showdown in the Wild West. This was a battle of perception, a carefully crafted question designed to corner him, to render him a relic of a bygone era. He allowed the question to linger, his gaze unwavering. Then, with deliberate calmness, he leaned forward and spoke. "Out of touch," he repeated, his voice edged with quiet steel. "Well, I suppose that depends on what you mean by today's world." The host seized the opportunity. "I mean, times have changed. People don't see things the way they used to. Your films, your characters, they represent a different era. Do you ever think that maybe the values you stood for in those films don't quite fit anymore?" The audience shifted once more. Some leaned forward, eager for a confrontation. Others exchanged glances, waiting to see if the Hollywood icon would crumble under modern scrutiny. Eastwood exhaled slowly, choosing his words with care. "I tell stories," he said finally. "Stories about courage, integrity, standing up for what's right, even when it's not easy. I don't think those things go out of style." The host tilted her head, her smirk deepening. But isn't it true that some people see your views as, well, extreme? A few scattered chuckles from the audience. Eastwood's fingers tapped lightly against the armrest. He wasn't angry, at least, not yet. But there was a flicker of something deep inside. Not frustration, not even defiance. It was an understanding, a quiet knowledge that he had been through this battle before. He had seen the tides of public opinion shift, had weathered the changing landscape of Hollywood, and yet he had remained steadfast. He knew exactly how this would play out. The cameras rolled, the world watched, and he had a choice. Engage in their game or remind them why Clint Eastwood had never backed down. The host leaned in, sensing hesitation. Come on, Clint. You have to admit, a lot of people see you as part of an era that's well past its prime. More laughter rippled through the audience. Clint Eastwood inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of his years, the dusty roads, the gunfights on screen, the men he had portrayed, men who stood firm when the world tried to push them down. This moment was no different. He met the host's gaze and let out a dry chuckle. I've been hearing that since the 70s,